Hello and welcome everyone to our February CloudBytes with Dean Dorton. Presenting today is Philip Massey. We will be covering the release 1 of 2023. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the chat feature. It's going to be on the right-hand corner of your screen. We will be monitoring it throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure to share any technical questions with our presenters at the end. We do not address your question during today's presentation. Contact information is included at the end of the materials, so please reach out after as needed. Excuse me. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you by the end of this week. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do not hesitate to ask questions, and without further ado, I give you Philip Massey.
All right, Julia, thank you very much. And everyone, welcome to today's presentation. I love doing these presentations and talking about all the wonderful, cool new features that Sage Intacct adds into their releases on a quarterly basis. And I think it really shines a light or highlights the advantages of having a cloud-based application that does get updated on a quarterly basis. So that being said, let's jump in. And as Julia mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to put something in the chat. I think there's a feature for raising your hand. If you really like something, you can give us a smiley face in the React portion of the Teams tool. So, you know, be engaged. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about the different things that we go through, and we would love to hear more from you. All right, so with that, let's get started. Okay, so release 1 highlights. When you talk about the release 1 for 2023, there is definitely an elephant in the room, so to speak, for that release. And that elephant is the AP automation general availability. So that's going to kind of be the big thing that we take a look at today. And I will walk you through how some of the different pieces of that AP automation work so that you can actually see it. I think it's an extremely good feature. And it's something that I believe that a lot of our clients and a lot of the folks that are on the call here are going to want to take advantage of. But there are some new things as well that go along with that. The credit application process and paying bills is more streamlined. Some vendor usability enhancements were made, and then some deep cross-industry functionality in different areas as well. So we'll cover those a little bit. And as always, if there's something you want to see more of, then please just let us know. We'd be happy to talk with you more about anything specific to nonprofits or project-based organizations. If you're on the Sage Intacct construction module, happy to talk with you about that as well too. So again, when you talk about release 1 of 2023, the big elephant in the room on that one is the AP automation, and we are extremely excited to announce that that has hit general availability. So every single instance of Sage Intacct now has the capability to use this AP automation. You do need to let us know if you want to use it, and we will work with Sage to enable it in your environment. This is not an add-on, so to speak, in the system or an enhancement in the system that is just there by default. It does need to be turned on. So if you would like to use it, please shoot an email to erpsupport@ddaaftech.com. And we'll take a look at it and how it actually works, and we'll see an example or two of some of the processes. But I think some of the keys here are that if you are an organization right now that is managing a lot of your payables by hand or all of your payables by hand, keying everything into Intacct by hand, And I would also at this point dare to say there are a couple of cautions. One is there's no multi-currency capabilities right now with it. So if you are processing transactions in euro or yen or any of those types of things, it isn't ready for you yet. It is US based only. And it does not yet work in the full purchasing workflow. So you can't, it only goes into AP bills. It can't be directed into vendor invoices, for example, where you could then match it up with a purchase order or a purchase receipt. So those are the two big caveats with it. But other than that, it is a very simple, very nice tool. And astoundingly, in this day and age, the cost of the module itself is $0. You pay per transaction. So the more invoices that flow through your AP workflow, the larger your bill is going to be for that. But the great way of thinking about it is that you're often processing invoices 50, 60, 70 times faster, so that you can get more done, or that you can repurpose some of what would be considered redundant work over into more intelligent work with analysis of AP bills or AP accounts or anything of that nature, vendor management type of stuff. So we will definitely jump into the AP bill automation after I get through with the slides, and we'll take a little bit of a tour. But this does complement the payment automation that has been in the Sage Intacct solution for a number of months now. And so this gives Intacct a full payables management workflow life cycle. And that's a lot to say, but it handles your vendor processes from beginning to end, assuming, of course, that it's not multi-currency and you're not using and needing to match back to purchase orders. Okay. So we'll take a look at that once I get through these slides. That's a huge thing and really could be enough for a release all on its own. But fortunately, they didn't stop there. So we have added, or Sage has added, an ability or an enhanced ability to apply credits to your payables bills in a more streamlined manner. You can now enter a date range for credits to be included and applied for open transactions. So for example, you can exclude credits created before, after, or matching dates of the AP bills in the selections. Helps you save some time by reducing that need to drill in, exclude certain credits from being applied or something along those lines. So that also is a very nice feature and should help you to be able to process the check run itself a lot more efficiently. And that one is in the system. I don't believe that you have to do anything to turn that on. We'll actually take a look at that screen as well to just double check. So this, I think, is a little more exciting potentially than what is just included in it right now. So if you haven't heard, Sage is in the mode of greatly trying to improve the view or list screens and the amount of things that you can do from those screens, whether it be gathering information or inputting information. They are going through the list screens in the system to systematically and programmatically make them more efficient. You will, in the vendor list screen, need to click the link to turn on the list beta interface. But from there, you have greater capabilities of personalizing your list views right on the screen, adding and removing columns, reordering, resizing columns, things like that. So it's a lot of that is much more in your control. And if you kind of think about it, it works a little bit like Excel from that nature. You can do some advanced filtering in the new vendor listing screen and just navigate the screen a lot easier. And if you notice that second screen, or the one that's the frontmost in the slide, you actually have, or could have now in this beta view of the screen, you could do the split screen there, so that on the left hand side is the list of vendors, and if you click on one, then it pops up on the right hand side of the screen. I think this is probably one of the most exciting enhancements in the Sage Intacct solution, because it will allow for future capabilities with those list screen enhancements, right? So, just the split screen concept, the batch operations concept with deleting, for example, they're really taking a look at those list screens, and I've always thought they were very good, very nice screens. But Sage is definitely on a mission to make those list screens be something that is much more useful and insightful for everyone that uses the product. So that, to me, again, I think is one of the more exciting, smaller enhancements. So adding tax automation. So we're going to get into some things now here that are either more industry specific or more modular specific improvements. So I know all of these won't apply to everybody, but again, when we get to the end of this, we will go back and take a deep dive into the AP improvements that I think are one of the best things they've done in a release in a while. So from a tax standpoint, and from a standpoint of VAT and GST, so the multi-tax, the foreign taxes, things like that, they are improving if anyone is using that inside of Intacct right now, and I believe we do have some customers that are using it. They're adding more tax automation for customers with businesses outside of the U.S. Bank rec rules, for example, can be configured to automatically add the VAT, GST to journal entries and credit card transactions, reducing the potential for errors. And they've also added electronic tax filings for South Africa. And I know that we actually have a couple of customers with offices in South Africa that should be pretty happy with that news. So making some improvements here in the VAT, GST area. And if we go forward to the next slide, again, here's the electronic tax filing for South Africa. So this is great. It is one of the requirements in that country that you file electronically. I believe it's called the South African VAT 201. And that now is, it's getting to the globalization of the Sage Intacct software. And I think that, there may be some of you sitting there now thinking, well, that's of no consequence to me at all. But even if you never do business in South Africa or England or any of these other nations that Sage Intacct is permeating now, the thing to remember is that these are beneficial enhancements for you, because it broadens the scope of who can use the Sage Intacct application, and therefore broadens the user base, the customer base, shores up the product itself, and gives more incentive to make all types of enhancements to the application. So it's not just about satisfying particulars in foreign countries and, let's take a break from the webinar right now and go fix a cup of coffee or something like that. These are good things to see in the product. If you are a nonprofit, you may be, or a faith-based nonprofit, you may be using a solution called Mateo. There's a lot of dioceses that use the Mateo solution for their savings and loan aspect of the organization. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there have been some efficiencies made within that module as well. If you are using the contracts module inside of Sage Intacct, this release includes several enhancements that increase the usability and flexibility of the subscription contracts. Usage charges can now be included in your evergreen subscription contracts, so you can, include minutes used, transactions used, any of those usage metrics that you might have in with the additional information in regards to their evergreen, say, standard monthly billing amount that you might send out to them as well. The second one is probably my favorite, preview billing schedule changes. So if you're making changes to the billing schedules inside of the contracts module, it can be something that you just have to be really careful for. And it's great now to have that preview capability to be able to see what the result of these billing changes are going to be before you save them. And here again, I think this is one of those things. Yes, it's in contracts, and you may be sitting there thinking, I don't do contracts. But the positive aspect of this is that they are looking to put these what if scenarios inside the solution more and more. So I think a lot of these things are something that will permeate the remainder of the program very soon as well. Let's see, what do we have next? Project-based businesses. So for those of you that are using almost said Microsoft Project. For those of you that are using the project module, project costing, project tracking, project costing and billing, any of those flavors, this release includes enhancements for generating invoices for projects. They've added more visibility into the state of the source transactions, so you can use that information to decide which ones to include. For example, you can decide to include paid AP bills when generating project invoices. And I think this could be of some especially good news for nonprofit organizations who use the project module for grants. And if you can only bill for your grant expenditures after you've paid them, this is the trick for you. So it will greatly enhance and make your processes more efficient as you go about grant billing. And that is one thing to keep in mind when we talk about projects in Intacct. These same features are exactly replicated over onto the grant side as well. So something to think about there for nonprofits also. You can also now enable project managers to produce quotes and orders in the order entry module if appropriate for how your organization works. So those are project manager users will now be able to produce quotes and orders in the order entry module. And I think there's probably at least one customer out there that might be smiling about that. So that I know of. So some pretty good enhancements there. The additional piece of this here, this is just showing the fact that a project manager user can indeed get into the order area within Intacct. For those of you that are running on construction, the CRE module, as it's called, construction real estate, several significant enhancements are included. Project contract and billing enhancements include the ability to release retainage as part of the project, generates invoice workflow, the ability to create one or more GL budgets for project contracts and reflect the budget entries on your financial reports. And then the 360-degree view, that those two things provide by including those into the functionality just gives you a tremendous amount of visibility into any related invoices, retainage releases, payments, all that stuff from the project contracts screen. So a lot of good insight there, a lot of good functionality as well for our construction customers added in. There's some payroll enhancements that are being made, optimizing the payroll menus and navigation for better usability, expanded custom reporting, PTO activity, tax and time card reports, etc. The field service module, we actually saw a full demonstration of this module yesterday for the first time. So this is the Sage Field Service module. It will work with the Intacct solution, and if you have folks that are going out into the field to do any kind of repair work, work orders, anything like that, it is completely integrated back into Intacct. We do see it, or we've seen the interest for it so far more in a construction environment, to where they take the construction module and that handles, say the large aspects of the work that you might do for clients, and then they've also got the field service module in for any follow-up work orders, punch list, repairs, that kind of thing. But it is an independently operating application, so you don't have to have CRE to do that. This would be a full service management type of solution. With this, one of the big improvements here is that they did just add a new mobile app so that you could run the field service on your iPhones or pads or anything of that nature. All right, so that's kind of the list. So I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint. Yeah. Right, and I am going to share my screen here so that we can take a look at the AP automation tools. So let me get back to here and share. All right, can anybody give me a thumbs up real quick that you can see my screen? I just want to make sure before I start doing a lot of talking. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so accounts payable. This is the bills screen. If you look at this screen and you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to see anything any different. Now, forgive me for saying that with this first line, because these areas here, you obviously see something different and you go, what the heck is that? But if you look closely at the screen, there's one thing you'll see here that is new, and that is this upload button. So we've always had the import button, and this stays here as CSV imports. But this upload button is part of the new AP functionality. Location here, what entity are we loading this into? And you can pick from any of your entities, or you can let it go at the top level as well. Generate a bill with each single line item that summarizes the total, or all line items and associated amounts. So one line item or multiple. And then just browse and drop the files, right? And you can drag and drop, or you can go out and browse. I'm going to pull this up, and then I will slide it over here. And I believe I've got an invoice. If I don't, I may just toss out a PDF file of some sort. So yeah, here we go. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it right here. You can see successfully uploaded one file. Here's the uploaded documents. And then if I need to upload more, of course I can upload more. And in fact, you know what? Let's just grab this and drag that one out there and golly gee, there was another invoice that needs to be dragged and dropped out here, right? So I've got those three in there, and I'm going to hit create bills. And it takes a little bit in order to do. You can see that it's starting to come through now. The other thing that I want you to notice is right here, the recipient email. So this says DDAF Tech VAR Skyline. That's actually the company ID for this particular instance, and this is the top level company ID. And then it says at sagemail.com. I'll show you when I jump into the setup that you'll actually have several different email addresses that you could use. I happen to think that the one that is tied to the top level is probably the best one to use. But this is the email address that if you were to take your email, and I'll slide this over here for just a moment. If you were to take your email and you were to look for, if you were to get set up a relationship with a vendor, you could either give this vendor this email address, or you could set up a relay or a forwarding process inside your own email that would forward it to these different email addresses. But if an email is sent to this address, it will process the attachment on that as an invoice. So I'm going to take one that's on my screen over here, and I can't show two screens, so I apologize for that. But I'll put in the email address here. Let me actually pop it out. I can pop it out and bring it over here. So this is an invoice. I'm going to strip some of this out just so it's not there. And I can send this invoice to this email address, and it will be read into the system. So if I hit send here now, this part does take a minute, especially with the bill traversing the internet, of course. But you can see here, we've got three that have been uploaded. We still have the one that was processed in. So if we take a look at this, and I come into here, one thing you'll notice right here, a matching vendor was not found. Select the vendor before posting, and this invoice is in a draft state. So we're not willy-nilly posting anything into your environment. These transactions are coming in. The system of Sage Intacct is using artificial intelligence and machine learning to read the attachment that you either upload or is sent via email to determine dollar amounts, to determine the vendor, to determine the dates perhaps. However, it's configured and you do have some controls over that. It will do its best to read the OCR data or OCR and read the data that's on the document and create as much of an AP bill as possible. So if for some reason this invoice came in and you already had the vendor in here and it just didn't recognize it, you could come in here and select the vendor. So we've got Green Team Waste Management. Or if it's a new vendor, then of course, and you have permissions, you could add the new vendor in at this point. Now you may be sitting there thinking, well, wow, that's great, but I got to pull the PDF up over on another monitor or something. But no, you don't. If you click here to view the attachment, here is the invoice that was transmitted in. So we've got a $100 invoice here. We've got it coming down to Green Team Waste Management, or we could have created one ourselves. Looks like the invoice number it thinks is 1580901. Yep, 1580901-269. Now, one of the things that's cool about this is, let's say you get invoices from them on a periodic basis, regular basis. If you do something like that, where you take the pound sign out from the beginning, it will eventually, and I can't say on the next transaction it will know that, but after maybe 2 or 3 transactions, it will remember that you don't need that pound sign anymore, and it will not bring it into the bill number. So the artificial intelligence and the machine learning both combine in, and the more documents you process, the more accurate this screen is going to be. So it only gets better from here, which really the thing that it missed was the vendor, because it didn't recognize the vendor's name. And then the bill number had the hashtag or pound sign in the beginning. It did default to repairs and maintenance when I chose Green Team Waste Management, so that's here. But it did also read the $100. So we've got our dates, we've got our repairs and maintenance account that came in when we did the Green Team, which also would have come in had we previously done the Green Team. And we have the currency amounts down here at the bottom, right? We would need to fill in this particular case, especially now in the very beginning. Again, it will learn this as you go along, and if you're more consistent with your coding, it will learn it. But really, yeah, I took the hashtag out, I set the vendor, and I added the department, and that was all I did to process this invoice. I can now submit it, and it will go up through the workflow. Invalid location. Sorry about that. Let's see. Let's put this back to sales, and let's just put that to 100. It cleaned out my vendor. Demos. I love doing demos. All right. So there, and there. Submit. There we go. All right, so that one's in there, and now we can also see this one that was forwarded in. So if I come in here to edit on this one that came in via email, again, it could not recognize the vendor, so we'd have to potentially either create the vendor or find the appropriate vendor. I'll just pick that one out of here. It's got the information in here that it brings in now. There's the bill number. And then we get down here to professional fees expense. And again, I can click here and I can see the invoice that comes through, right? So this process is very simple to set up. A lot of it is based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. So there's not really a lot of configuration either. Once you have it enabled, if we go into the payables configuration area, and again, step number 1, shoot an email to erpsupport@ddaftech.com. I don't know as of today what the per transaction fee is, but I have been told, and fully disclaiming this, that it is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 cents per transaction. So there could be some tiers there for that or something along those lines. But for the functionality you've seen, it is going to be a transaction based or usage based billing for it. If I come down, once it is installed or enabled in your environment, it is right here, bill automation settings. Notice you have 2 service names here, one for uploads, one for email, and you have 2 configuration buttons over here. This configuration button is really just a matter of these are the different entities we have and these are the different entity names, and it's not even anything that you can change. So that's not really a configure as much as it is a view. Configure here, the email services, you get these choices here that you can configure for it. And then this lists out all of your different email addresses. So notice that you do get one for the top level, but you also get one for each of the different entities that you manage here as well. So you could give out an email address per entity and have the vendor send the invoice to the email that's going to go specifically into the Canadian company, the Australian company, one of the US companies, etc. Okay. And believe it or not, that's it. Most of the bulk of the functionality in this is handled through machine learning and artificial intelligence. And again, the goal is to get to the point where the invoices come in and you're really just reviewing 80–90% of your invoices and not having to make any kind of adjustments or changes to them. There'll always be new vendors. You'll always have some vendors where one service, one invoice is for one service and one invoice might be for another service, something along those lines. But this will greatly cut down on the amount of time and effort that it takes to process payables invoices in the system. And don't forget that it is also or can also be paired with the vendor payment solutions by CSI, Corporate Spending Innovations, so that you can process the AP bill electronically, and you can also then process the payment aspect of accounts payable electronically as well. If you want any information about any of those, reach out to me. If you want the payables automation turned on in your environment, let us know. Shoot an email to erpsupport@ddaftech.com, and we'd be more than happy to work with you to get that enabled into your environment so that you can start to use it. Obviously, you'll probably want the exact numbers for the cost on the transaction fee, and we would get those to you and make sure that that's okay before you begin to incur any fees for processing transactions. Okay. One of the other big things is that the vendor list, vendor view screen. So in another browser window here, I am in the vendor listing for Skyline Professional Services. And in the vendor listing, what I had said during the slide portion of the program was to click a link to turn on the beta interface. And here's that link. So if I click this, my screen refreshes, my configuration reloads, and this is the beta view as it says, so do keep that in mind, beta view. But here you are with an ability to, as it says, open columns up. I must not be clicking on it exactly right. There we go. Open columns up, easily drag and drop and move columns around. Get into some advanced filtering with these different columns, and bulk process certain things. So if I imported a whole list of vendors and I don't want to have to delete them one by one or anything like that, I can go through and select lists. I could do a filter in here somewhere, select lists, check boxes to check everything by default, and delete, or delete 6 of these. You still have the same view capabilities in here where you can build views and you can have your own custom views inside the system, but those views are now inside of this new list management functionality. And like I said, I think the thing that is most exciting to me with this is the fact that the functionality is coming to all areas, all list views inside of Sage Intacct. So it's not just going to stay in the vendor area. And you might be thinking, well, gosh, we'd love to have this in the customer area or in the projects area or something along those lines. You got to start somewhere, right? And so that's what they're doing, and they are going to work this into other areas. Now, perhaps one of my favorite little bitty features, I would say, in this release is what I just showed you. So if we go back, whoops, that's not back. If we go back, let me go back. So I'm in a list here. And you know, you've got the, whoops, well, okay, so here, this is the old list interface. And you've got the edit and view over here, but if you happen to click on vendor name, like I do, even after 12 years of working with the product, it tries to take you into a ledger for that particular vendor. So you have to back up and then you come over here and do this. Well, if you're in the beta interface, which by the way, here's your turn off beta button. So if you don't like it for whatever reason, you can go back to where you were. But in the beta interface, if I want to look at Lenovo, I click on Lenovo and it brings Lenovo up on the right-hand side in that split screen view. I can then say, okay, no, it wasn't Lenovo, it was Kaufman and Langer LLP. Was that the right company that we were looking for, or was it Consulting Grid? So it's much easier to navigate through how, you know, to navigate through the list of vendors that you might have, find information about them. And again, this is their card. So if you needed to do some updates to type IDs or, you know, contact lists or payment providers or anything like that to multiple different vendors, this new list view will make that process a lot more streamlined. And I believe this button is for feedback. Yeah, so if you have feedback, if you want to give feedback to them, I remember when they were doing the user interface update many years ago, and they had a lot of feedback from end customers, and that's part of the reason why that user interface rework several years ago took longer than anyone really anticipated, is because they kept getting good feedback from end customers on ways to make the interface even better. So if you do go in here and you work with the vendor listing like this, and you're in this beta view, then please do give them some feedback. I think it would be a bit foolhardy to not give them feedback with this if you use it. Okay? So those were the big things. Coming up on 45 minutes, so I'll pause here and just ask Julia if you have any questions that have come in or anything that we need to further discuss.
No questions at this time, Philip, but we always appreciate your expertise. We're going to hang around for a few more minutes to see if there are any questions. We do appreciate everyone's time for joining us today. This was wonderful. Thank you, Philip.
Sure, sure. I tell you what, before you guys go, how about a show of a thumbs up reaction or something along those lines if you think the AP automation tool might be something for you and your organization, and we're not going to like capture all this data and harass you about it, but if you think it's something you might want to use, okay, good. So we've got a few people that are interested in it. All right. Well, it's been great presenting this to you. If you want any more information about anything we've talked about today, please reach out to us. You should have my email address. If not, ERP support works. ERP sales at ddaftech.com works as well. So reach out to us if you need anything, and
Philip,
we'd love to help you. Yeah.
Philip, we did have a guest who was typing a question. I don't know if they're going to submit it or not, but I did see someone typing. So we may want to hang around just another second to see if they submit something.
Okay, sure. While we wait, I think one of the interesting things about having a very dispersed, you're welcome, Amy. Thank you for attending. Just finish this thought really quickly. One of the interesting things about having a dispersed workforce, our team is geographically dispersed across the U.S. We have more than a few consultants who are in the northern areas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, places like that, where right now they are getting hit with, I talked to one of them today, and she said they thought it was going to stop at 16 inches of snow, and south of her had gotten up to 28 inches of snow in some places. We have someone who is in Arizona who is enjoying a balmy 70-some degrees. And believe it or not, in the North Carolina area where I am, it is scheduled to reach 87 degrees today. So it's interesting to talk weather with the team sometimes and see how far apart we are on things. So.
Well, it is also beautiful in Kentucky, and we hope it is beautiful wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and we hope to see you at the next release.
Thank you.
Thank you.